Welcome to Old Classic Car, and in this compilation we are looking specifically at red cars. And to begin with, we have this lovely little Fiat 500. This was at one of the Crew Heritage meets a year or two back, but what a little cracker that is. Late 1972 or early 1973 is the date of that particular car, and that Fiat opens up this collection of red cars. Next up, this car will be familiar to anyone who watches Top Gear, the old Clarkson, Hammond and May era Top Gear. And we've got this much modified Jaguar XJS now on display at the Bewley, the National Motor Museum. And car number 3 in this collection is a lovely 4-door example of the Volvo Amazon, the 122S. The twin carburettor powered car. This could either have the B18 engine, the 1.8 litre, or the B20, the 2 litre engine. I'm guessing as a 66 car, that'll probably be on the 1.8 litre engine. Okay, next up, thanks to Nev in Australia for this particular photo, a fantastic front view of an Armstrong Siddeley Hurricane. These were built from just after Second World War, 1946, right through to 1953. This photo probably dates back, I would have thought, to the 1980s, but yeah, what a great car that is. Is it still around, I wonder? To more recent times, this was earlier 2023, and we have a Mark IV Ford Cortina, a 4-door saloon. This was in Llandudno, and I seem to have a selection of old Haynes manuals for sale on the grass there, and we'll be visiting the Haynes Motor Museum slightly later on in this particular video. Now to Prescott, the Prescott Hill Climb, and we have the Beast of Turin, the mighty Fiat S76, 28.4 litres of engine there, 300 brake horsepower at just 1000 RPM. What an incredible car that is, rebuilt in more recent times. Okay, next up we have a very smart little Opel GT. That G plate tells us this one dates to probably late 1968 or the beginning of 1969. These were built from 68 through to 73. And here we are over at Alton Park. There was a classic car auction at one of the Gold Cup meetings. We've got a 5-door Ford Sierra here on the J plate, complete even down to the old plastic wheel trims. I'm not sure that they are Ford wheel trims, but they're very much in keeping for a car of this age. And this was on the Weaver Wonder, if you saw that video, and you'll recognise this car, a Mazda RX-3 rotary engine car. Quite a rare sight, but this one does happily pop up at classic car events on a fairly regular basis around the Cheshire and Shropshire area, which is it's always a treat to see and hear this one drive past. Back to pre-war years now, DL9135 is the registration, and this is a standard from 1934. I think it's a standard 12.6. The engine size is recorded with DVLA at 1500cc or just underneath, so I think it is probably a 12.6. And so a historic rally just a few years ago, and we've got a rally prepared Volvo PV544 here. What a great looking car that is. This car dates probably to the beginning of the 1960s, but the inspiration was, I think, a 1940s Ford, and you can certainly see that with the beetleback styling there. Okay, now we are down at the Haynes Motor Museum, and the first of several cars that feature photographed in their red room. There's a room dedicated solely to red cars, and I thought, well, if they can do it, then so will I. And here we've got a Porsche 356 Coupe, dating to 1965. Next up, GCU 109F. This is a Gilburn, I think it's a Genie, the 3-litre car, and this car was registered in December of 1967. Quite a sharp looking car, built in Wales. Nice set of wire wheels on this particular example. And back to the Crew Heritage Centre. There's Dad in the background with the flat cap on, and in the foreground we have a 4-door Vauxhall Viva HC. There's my youthful assistant just to the left there. It's an evening meet. This was an evening pub meet on a very, very fine day. We have TVS 729, a Triumph TR3A, also in bright red. Here we are in a small but perfectly formed motorcycling museum somewhere up north. I can't quite remember where this is, but also on display, as well as that A35 van, was this fantastic 2.4 or 3.4 litre Jaguar, the Mark I saloon of the 1950s and forerunner of the Mark II. Now, the first of several period photographs to feature in this particular collection. We've got a head-on view of a bright red Ford Cortina Mark II. That's on a G plate, which puts it at late 68 or early 1969. Is that Ronnie Barker sat down there? Okay, to slightly more recent times, the mid-2000s, and this was photographed on a trip down to Malvern. And here we have a Frisky, the Meadows Frisky Sport, KSK 897, a three-wheeler. And of course we know what this is, a Triumph TR6, L-registered Triumph TR6 two-seater, big straight six engine in that one. That's a very sharp looking car indeed. I always really like the really wide steel wheels on these cars, it just looks so purposeful, I think. Now back to the Haynes Motor Museum and this incredible vehicle in the livery of the Lewistown Fire Department. This is a Pontiac Superior ambulance, dating to 1968. Slight vibes of Ghostbusters there, I think, with that particular one. And this is a Nova kit car, and beneath that sleek exterior beats the engine of a VW Beetle in the back. Incredible car. I had a ride in one of those once many years ago. You get in by lifting the whole roof assembly up, no separate doors, just lift the whole top up. Just make sure you have a nice tall roof in your garage. Okay, this was much more recently, and we have a Triumph Spitfire Mark II, I think this one is, 1147cc, twin carburetors, based on the Triumph Herald, of course. The rear three-quarter view, MG Montego Turbo, this one on a G plate and a very rare survivor now. Now, thanks to a channel follower, Tony Wimble, for this one. He photographed this car at Paynton at the Classic Car Show down there earlier in 2023, and the car is a Humber Scepter. Very smart looking example, complete with extra sun visor over the screen and a full length fabric folding roof as well. Very sharp looking car based on the Hillman Super Minx. Slightly more modern now, we're on an H plate, and I'm pretty sure we're looking at a Honda Civic here, somewhat modified, but quite a sharp looking car now. Believe it or not, this next car started out at a 1963 MGB before being completely rebodied by racer Douglas Wilson Spratt, and the car became known as the WSM GT. There's actually a page on the main Old Classic Car websites about some of his cars, photos of various cars that he converted over the years. And next up, a bright red Chrysler brackets Hillman Avenger Estate. That's a nice looking car. R-Reg, really rare. So late 1976 is the date of that one, or possibly early 1977. Back to a bit of a historic rally moment, and look at this beautiful little Alfa Romeo here. This is a Giulia, the Berliner, or saloon, the four-door saloon, left-hand drive, photographed at speed, and it just looks a really good looking saloon car, I think. Those are lovely. Back to Nev in Australia again, and he photographed this many years ago, and he sent that over as a scan, so thanks for that. The car is an SS1 airline saloon, about 1935-ish, something like that, 38. In all, I think about 148 SS1s were built in all. Back to the historic rally, this was over at Beeston in Cheshire, and we've got an MGB GT being given a bit of welly on a very damp test. And yeah, I think this area has now been built over. There's now houses where this former cattle market used to be, which is a bit of a shame. And look at this. Here we have the Ashley. This originally was the Ashley 1172, designed to go on Ford Pop running gear although judging by those wheels I think this one is on slightly later mechanicals. But yeah, it's great to see this one. Occasionally it appears at some of the local classic car shows that we get to, and again finished in red. And this, I think, was probably at the same meeting. We've got a great little Morris Mini Cooper in the foreground there, dating to 1966, plus a bevy of other cars as well. A Mark 1 Cortina, an MGB GT, and a Triumph TR4A, and then one of the BMW era Minis as well. So quite a variety of cars there on the Weaver Wonder. Now we're over at Alton Park, and the car is a Dodge Dart Swinger on a K-plate, which puts it about late 71 or early 1972, left-hand drive, so an import. Yeah, quite a purposeful looking car, very clean styling. All the fins and everything had long gone by this point in time, and I think I'll probably prefer them for it. Okay, and here we've got a head-on view of PHX 207L, a Ginetta G15, being given the beans on a historic rally just a few years ago. This was at the Rednall Karting Centre in Shropshire. That was the location for this photo. And sticking with rallying for a moment, this was over in Ruthin. This was a great do. There is a video of the cars competing at this particular meet. I think it's part of the Hero Challenge, if I remember right. And this is the Alfa Romeo Alfetta, which Alfetta literally means Little Alpha, which is a bit of a strange choice for a four-door saloon, but there you go. And of course we know this is a VW Beetle on an L plate, nice wheels on it. VWs are always being modified, and look at that Sherpa camper alongside. What a great old thing that is. Next up in this collection of red cars, we are back to Alton Park. This was Autos de France in 2023, which there is a video around for that, and the car is a Renault GTA V6. And here we have a Delahaye 135M Cabriolet. This particular car dates to 1939, GU 222 is the registration, and the Haynes Motor Museum is the location. Not in the Red Room, I don't think, this particular car. But yeah, what a grand looking machine that is. Very, very nice. And how about this? An E-Reg Morris Mini Estate. Very, very nice. The little woody estate. Unlike the Morris Minor, that wood is purely cosmetic, whereas on the Minor it was actually structural. But that is purely just for appearances. And this was at a gathering in 2023, a V4 engined Saab 96, used with a bit of club rallying in mind. There was some timing gear on the dashboard, I remember, as well as those nice wheels and some CB lamps on the front. Here we are over at Prescott again. This was a few years ago at La Vie en Bleu, I think it was. And we've got Harry Metcalf of Harry's Garage. This is his Countach, Lamborghini Countach, and alongside, I'm guessing that's probably his Ferrari Testarossa. Then we're back down in Malvern many years ago for the classic car event held at the Three Counties Showground. 679 NBJ is a 1962 scooter car. 197cc engine, Villiers engine. These were built in Leeds between 57 and 64. Slightly more familiar territory here, and we have the Jaguar 420, which was the revised version of the S-Type, introduced probably as a bit of a stopgap until such time as the XJ6 was ready to launch in 1968. Several years ago we found ourselves in Portugal, and while we were driving around small towns and villages we spotted this incredibly well preserved, if faded, red Ford Capri. I wonder what happened to this one. I hope it was saved, but the flat tyres and general air of desolation mean it may well not be around anymore. And we're back to the Red Room at the Haynes Motor Museum. Cup 77G is a Rochdale Olympic. Still loads of red classic cars to come, vintage cars, classic cars and so on. And here, one of the later cars to feature in this collection. If you saw my video of us driving around Devon looking for interesting things, you may well remember this one, the Citroen BX. Looking a little bit second hand, but is it in mid-restoration? Is it going to be restored, or is it just being used for parts? I'm not quite sure. But either way, you don't see them too often now. And how about this? A Sunbeam Alpine from 1965. And quite a nice Porsche 911 alongside, also in red, so that one gets a mention just because of the colour. Back at Alton Park, and just sneaking into the corner of shot there, we've got a Mark 1 Austin A40 Farina, and in the centre a race prepared Jaguar Mark 2. Classic Triumph time here, and back to the Crew Heritage Centre for one of their regular meetings. EFH 315M Triumph Stag, the V8 powered Triumph Stag. Very, very smart indeed. These are really growing on me now, especially with the hardtops. I think the hardtops just really set them off a treat. And also at Crew Heritage, we've got this, the little Maestro there, probably Rover Group era, as opposed to Austin of the earlier cars. Yeah, Maestro, and alongside that, an orangey red Mark III Ford Escort. And to a very sunny Tatton Park Classic Car Show. This was in 2023, and we've got CPB2H, the Herald-based Bond Equipe or Equipe. This one was registered in April of 1970. It's got the 1296cc four-cylinder engine from the Triumph Herald underneath that fiberglass bonnet. Okay, next up, an R-Reg Fiat 124 Spider. That's a lovely looking car, I think, and those wheels really set it off. Mini lights don't suit all cars, I think, but in this case I think they look bob on. Another Amazon, this time a two-door. We had a four-door before, and this was looking a little bit derelict. Last time I visited this location, all these cars in the undergrowth have been cleared, so has it gone on to be restored or used for parts, or was it scrapped? Let me know in the comments if you know the fate of this Amazon. It was a few years ago that I photographed it, but hopefully it's still around. And staying with classic Volvos, we are now down at Ragley Hall, see separate video, and we have a Volvo P1800S on a slightly wider set of factory style steel wheels there. Very, very nice looking car, and those wheels really set it off, I think. Now back to Tatton, and a mighty Cadillac, the Cadillac Eldorado Seville. This car from 1957. What an eye-catching bit of kit that is, incredible. And this was at the North Wales Classic Car Show in 2022, and it's a Ford Escort, Mark 1, but not any old Mark 1, this is the twin cam. Very, very nice. Bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Lovely engine, punchy engine under that bonnet, but from the exterior it looks kind of like any regular two-door. But yeah, lovely, lovely car. And how about this? A mildly race-prepared Jaguar XK120 Roadster RDU 867. And look at this, at a former RAF airfield, and we spotted this, the remains of a Jensen Healey. Is this another car that's sort of mid-restoration, or restoration is planned for, or maybe it's just being used for parts? I'm not quite sure, but it was sat outside, not particularly well covered up, so I'm guessing the future's not too bright for that one. And here on a New Year's Day meeting of VSCC Meets, we've got a lineup of very fine motor cars indeed, and in the foreground a Singer 9 Le Mans ALV 549. And back to Alton Park, and an action photograph here, front view, of a lovely step-nose Alfa Romeo there. And this was in Portugal in 2023. We had to go over there for a few days, and while we were there we spotted this beautifully restored Citroen 2CV just parked at the side of the road. Absolutely immaculate. Look at the paintwork under the wheel arches there. Absolutely mint this one was. Really real treat to see this one just around the corner from where we were staying. And how about this? The first time I've seen one of these too. This was at the Middlewich Classic Car Show earlier this year. An Alt-Sit. This was the result of a collaboration between the Romanian government, the communist Romanian government, and Citroen. and the result was this, a car which looks a little bit like Citroen Visa, but I don't think there are too many links with it. And back to the oldie worldy photographs again now, possibly in the New Forest, and we have a Rover P6, the Rover 2000 of about 1966 or 67, I would have thought, this particular car. And how about this, a Marcos? Note the Triumph Herald bonnet catch there. Those bonnet catches appear on several different cars, and they were reused, and they did the job very well by all accounts. But yeah, lovely car, very, very low slung cars these were. And here we are at the Eccleshaw Classic Car Show just a couple of months ago. That was a show we really wanted to get to for a little while, and it's great to get there finally. 500 KNX, a fantastic little two-stroke Saab, a bullnose Saab, really, really sweet little car, this one. And back to Ruthin in North Wales for the historic rally, and we've got an Audi 80 Sport. I think this was about 1984. Pretty sure this was a Sport rather than a Quattro. Next up in this compendium, the compilation of red cars, we have the good old Jaguar E-Type 70E, very appropriate registration number there. It's a fixed head coupe, a Series 2 with a larger front side light units compared to the Series 1s, and a different bumper and so on. Many, many differences between these and the first cars, but very, very nice indeed. Oh, and look at here, not a Renault 4CV, this is the UK built Renault 750, just like the one we've got. Although, unlike ours, this has a tuned Renault 5 engine in the back. I'm sure that goes very, very well indeed. This was at one of the Alton Park events, probably Autos de France again in 2023. And several years ago, back to the Red Knoll Karting Centre, historic rally action. And this rarity, this is a rare example indeed of the FIAT 2300 Coupe, coachwork by Gear. You can just see the small Gear badge on the front wing there. And what do we have here? The automatic version, or the Honda-matic version, as it should be said, of the Honda Civic. This was at Tatton Park in 2023. Again, if you haven't seen that video yet, please check that one out when you're finished here. That's a rare, rare car. Hardly ever see these around now. And we're back to Haynes, and this, the AC428 Frewer convertible. These were built from 1965 to 73, about 81 I believe were built. And the basis for this was an extended Cobra 427 chassis. This was spotted at Alton Park from quite a distance away actually. I was driving in, so I grabbed a snap of this Aston Martin DB6 Volante. Okay, back down to Prescott, and we have this early 1980s Renault 5 Turbo. What an incredible car that is. The rear, or mid-engine rather, turbocharged car built very much with Group B rallying in mind. But what an incredible car that is. You have the Turbo 1 and the Turbo 2. I'm not quite sure which one this is, but either way, it's an incredible car. And look at this, Land Rover Defender. We spotted this one in France not that long ago. A French registered left-hand drive Land Rover Defender in bright red. Very sharp looking example. That one looks really, really nice. This was in Aramonch, if I remember right. And back down to Ragley Hall, and this much modified Humber. I'm assuming it started out as a Super Snipe or an Imperial, but I think there's a Rover V8 engine hiding under that particular bonnet. More details in the comments please if you know more about this particular car, or indeed any of the cars that feature in this particular collection. And now we're over at the Llangollen Motor Museum, and the long-term resident there is this V8 Alfa Romeo Montreal right-hand drive car. I don't think the wheels are original, but I think, if I remember right, the wheels were stacked up somewhere nearby the original rims. Okay, next up, and a somewhat derelict early base model Mini. You can tell it's an early one because you've got the very early dash there and so on, and it's got the fixed rear side window, so it's not a deluxe, just a single speedometer, and yeah, it looks like it's been well picked over. Back to Malvern, and a very jolly example of the Fairthorpe Electron Miner, little fiberglass bodied sports car there. Again in red, back to the Ruthin and that special stage in the historic rally that we visited, and a Volvo 142, the two-door version of the Volvo 140. I'm not entirely sure if the two doors were ever sold here when new here in the UK, so this could be an import. But yeah, it's great to see this one. It sounded really good on 240 GLT alloy wheels. And next up, the Austin Ambassador. This was the sort of reskinned and revised version, I suppose, of the Leyland Princess of the 1970s, and finally introduced the full hatchback. Whereas the Princess just had a small boot lid, the Ambassador had the full proper hatchback. Now to one of the evening meets that we go to, one of the pub meets, and this, a lovely little Sunbeam Imp Sport here on a J plate from 1970 or early 1971. What a great looking little car that is. Of course it's based on the Hillman Imp, a sort of slightly modified, souped up version of the Hillman Imp, and a very similar car parked in front of it. Back to Alton Park, and in the car park area we saw this, registered A10 RSR. I had to look this one up. It's a 1984 Porsche 911 3.2 RSR replica, and very, very purposeful it looked as well. That's a great looking car, that is, proper air-cooled 911. And this was down at Malvern this year, just a couple of months ago now, on an F-plate, a Mazda 121. Don't see those too often now, so I'm trying to feature a real mix of cars in this particular compilation, in this case all of them red. And look at this, this again is over in what was the Beeston Cattle Market a few years ago, an RS 2000 being given some welly, AAO 880T. Yeah, that one's clearly living a hard life, being driven like you stole it. And this was at Carfest at Alton Park about 10 years ago, something like that. Ferrari 250 GTO. This is the car that belongs to Nick Mason, the drummer with Pink Floyd. It's a band you may have heard of, possibly. What an incredible looking car that is. And here, a dainty post-war Singer 9 Roadster HSK 396, I think is the registration number of that one. Okay, a little Austin Healey Sprite next. I think this is a Mark II. These still had the lift-out side screens as opposed to wind-up door windows, and to get in the car, you actually had to sort of lift a little flap up on the side of the side screen to pop your hand in to get at the interior door handle, which was quite a novelty. Can you imagine a car like that now? Back to Alton Park, and we've got a rear three-quarter view of a BMW 2000 Ti being worked upon, the four-door saloon of the late 1960s, the Neue Klasse era of BMW saloon. Quite a sharp looking motor, I think that's actually very, very nice. You hardly ever see those, although there is one rotting away about 5 miles away from where I'm sat now. Okay, back to Crewe Heritage Centre, and here we have a Mark III Triumph Spitfire with the 1296cc engine, slightly different cam compared to the Herald, twin carburetors as well, and these bobbed on quite happily, about 75 brake horsepower or thereabouts I think in standard form, but a very tunable engine. Now to Alton Park and one of the classic car auctions that takes place there during the Gold Cup weekends, and we've got a 1985 Opel Manta Berlinetta here. There were coupe versions available as well, and this is the fastback version of the Berlinetta. Carrying on with these classic red cars, we're back down to a Prescott Hill Climb and SN 333. This is a 1935 Maserati 4CS. What a Bobby Dazzler that one is. That looks like a lot of fun, and you can see the little timing thing on the front there, the little thing that breaks the timing beams at the start and end of the run. The side-on view now of a Porsche 944 Coupe. Here we have the good old MGTF, the last of the old upright styled MGT series cars before the MGA came along in about, I think that was about 1955, I think the MGA came in, so this is probably 53 or 1954, this particular car. And here we have the Amphicar. This was a German car, albeit with Triumph Herald engine, and you can see the German spelling on the badge there, AMPFICAR. As we tend to say PH, they have it as PF. car dates to 1966. Head on view now of one of my favourite Jaguars of the sort of 50s, 60s, the Jaguar S-Type, the 3.4 litre S-Type, as the information board there helpfully tells us. This one on an F plate, so that pins this one down to late 67 or early 1968. Very, very nice car. Very similar in style at the front to the Mark II, but benefited from independent rear suspension. We had the MG before. Here we've got XSJ 895 and MGA fixed head coupe, also in bright red. Next up, a Toyota MR2 Mark I, again at Alton Park. This was at, I think, Tuna Fest, I think it was. This was held in 2022, was the year that we attended. Many, many years ago I went over to Donington Park. There was a classic car auction set to take place, so this was on the viewing day. And that's when I snapped this photograph of a rather smart Austin A60 Countryman, the estate version of the Austin Cambridge. I wonder if this one's still around anymore. This was going back a few years now. And back to Ruthin, and a rally prepared Triumph TR6. Very, very nice indeed. This one sounded great. If I remember right, I think they had a problem with the fan belt on this one, and there's a bit of a mad scurry round to replace the fan belt because it snapped in between runs, which was quite annoying, I imagine. And we're back over to Llandudno in North Wales, 2023. We had the Mark IV Cortina before, and now we have the Mark V Cortina, also four-door saloon example, KBD 45Y. What's going on with that Metro alongside, I'm not quite sure. Here's a rare one down at Haynes, JDA 555. This is a Turner from the early 1950s. It's got a Lee Francis engine of 1767cc. Quite a distinctive looking little sports car there, and that grille looks a lot like the cheese grater grille from a Morris Minor. And over to Alton Park, and there's a rally stage held there, and we've got a Triumph GT6 Mark II. This model had the Rotoflex rear suspension, but it didn't stop this example spinning out in front of us probably a couple of seconds only after this photograph was taken. I think there may be a video clip of that somewhere. And back over to that auction that I mentioned before at Donington Park, and we've got a lovely little Triumph Herald 1200 convertible here, GCL 666F. Is this car still around? I mean, like I said, this was probably the best part of 15 years ago, maybe more, so hopefully it's still out and about somewhere. And back to the US Auto Show at Alton, and we've got a notchback Ford Mustang, a 1967 Ford Mustang, looking very, very sharp on what was a lovely day actually. Back to Portugal. This was in Coimbra, I think, and there's our hire car in the background of that Suzuki Swift, but the main focus is of course the Renault 4. We've had the Sprite Mark II, and here is its older daddy, the Austin Healey Sprite Mark I, the Frog Eye Sprite, KSK 261. Usually have a 948cc twin carb engine under that lift-up bonnet, but many have been modified and upgraded. 1275 engine conversions are quite popular. And here, a rear three-quarter view of a Volvo 144 saloon. We saw the rally prepared 142 before, also on later 240 GLT wheels. And here we've got the four-door version on the same set of wheels from a much later car. But yeah, that's a nice looking car. Alton Park on the rally skid stage, I suppose you call it, on the infield area. I've got a Mark 1 MX-5, or technically this is probably a Unos. This, I think, is a Japanese import car, judging by that more rectangular number plate compared to the UK market cars. And here, Vauxhall Astra GTE Mark 1. This is on an A plate, about 1983, the date of this particular car, rival to the Ford Escort XR3i and the Golf GTI. But yeah, not too many of these survive. This is at one of the Hopley House morning meets we went to, just probably earlier this year actually, VW Beetle on a J plate, so 1970-ish. Yeah, lovely, lovely, really sharp example of a standard VW Beetle, not modified from what I can tell. A huge gaggle of cars here. This was on one of the Weaver Wander runs. I think this was at the 22 gathering. Check out the video if you haven't seen it yet. In the foreground, an MGB and all sorts of other cars there. Several red cars, white cars and so on. Lovely Model A there too. Rear three-quarter view now of a Peugeot 205, not a GTI, but this is the 205 GR. Slightly modified, slightly lower suspension on different wheels as well, possibly off the Rally. Yeah, that's just a great looking little car. I do like that a lot. Here we have the two-door Daimler version of the Jaguar XJ Coupe. This is the Daimler. It could be a 4.2 or a 5.3. Either way, very sharp looking car. Those two-door cars with the pillarless design. You can wind down both side windows and you've got a lovely airy opening there, a bit like on the old Sunbeam Rapiers. Okay, Taunton Park, the Paddock area at Taunton Park. And we've got an Austin Healey 3000 here being unloaded from its truck. Nice car, big 3-litre straight 6 engine under that bonnet, the big old BMC C-Series engine, probably on triple Webers I would have thought. Slice of America here, 173X VC, a Ford Thunderbird, 5.1 litres from 1955. Let me know in the comments if you're a fan of red cars, or maybe you have bad experiences, bad memories of owning a red car and wouldn't own one again. Now we're down to Malvern. This was a preview day for an auction that took place down there. Got KJ9306, a little Morris Minor, probably about 1933 or 4. Very similar to the car that we had until recently. Yeah, lovely little car. This was sold as the 2-seater. It wasn't the Tourer, it was the 2-seater. I love the old period photo here of an F-Reg Morris Mini Minor. Quite a late example of the Mark 1. Look at that huge whip radio aerial there, sort of attached to the gutter. Who remembers those? But yeah, lovely car. It's got one of those stick-on rear window demisters. Very nice. Back to Crew Heritage. We've got OC Case 781P, a TVR 1600M from 1975. Carrying on with this compilation, we're at Tatton Park quite a few years ago now, late 2000s probably. NUV 924 is a 1953 Lagonda drophead coupe. Very nice indeed, 2.6 litre engine, real quality car that is, but you don't see very many of them at all. There were saloon versions and these open top cars available. Back to Alton, we've got a Porsche 914. Kicking up the dust here is a Triumph 2000 Mark 1, or it could be a 2.5. Visually they're pretty much the same. This one's got alloy wheels on it, mini light alloy wheels, extra lamps and so on. And again, this was at the Beeston Cattle Market, a site which is no longer available to anything unless you want to buy a house. Okay, a D-plate Nissan now, the Nissan Bluebird ZX Turbo. One of those sort of turbocharged cars of the 1980s. But yeah, that's a rare survivor as well now. And this one was in really good condition, because like most cars of that era, they tended to fade away, go rusty, plastic bits fell off, and it's nice to see that one. And here, the Sunbeam Tiger, the V8 daddy version of the Sunbeam Alpine. XUN 100 is the registration, 4.7 litres, and built in 1968, this particular example. There's a red BMW Z3 just poking in on the left there. Here's a lovely vintage car here down at Prescott. This is a Bugatti Type 13 Brescia. I think it dates to about 1924, this one, 1496cc, and the Guernsey registration, I think it was. But yeah, what a nice little car that is. And by complete contrast is this behemoth from America. OVS 334 is the registration. It's a Chrysler Windsor 2-door hardtop. This car built in 1957, and like the XJ that we featured before, with pillarless construction. Yeah, another very airy, light and airy car. And Elvis, I am a fan of this era of Elvis, I must admit. This one's from 1965, it's an Elvis TE21 Series 3. Got aluminium coachwork there with an ash frame underneath. And this slinky little number is a Di Tommaso Pantera. This is quite an early one. Later cars, they sort of got fatter and bigger wheels and big spoilers and wings and all kinds of things. But this is a fairly early example, very crisp looking car, like the Countach. I think the earlier ones look better than the later ones. Bit of trackside action here with a two-door Ford Cortina Mark I being given a bit of welly. This car dates to 1965. And how about this one, XPP 48F? Very nice little Honda S800. And the older Mustangs, the classic Mustangs of the 60s, turn up quite regularly at the classic car shows we tend to get to, but less so this, the replacement, the Ford Mustang II. These were built during the oil crisis years, introduced in 1973 and built through to 78, but not so many people are preserving these. And then lovely, really sharp looking three-door VW Golf GTI Mark I here. I like the stickers on the headlights, very, very good. While we were down in Devon earlier this year, 2023, you may have noticed we visited the Morton Hampstead Motor Museum. If you haven't seen the video yet, please check that one out. Amongst the many, many interesting cars was this fantastic 1959 MG Magnette. Such an original car this was. It was in incredible condition, original paint and so on. And this is pretty rare as well. I mean, Ford Corsairs are pretty thin on the ground, but this is one of the Crayford converted convertible versions of the two-door Ford Corsair. Got a matching pair of big Healeys here, the Austin Healey 3000s at Alton Park several years ago. The car in the background, SMO 746, that's a genuine X-Works rally car from 1959, so that one's got loads of history. The car in the foreground, I'm not sure about that one, I can't see any registration numbers, so I don't know any more about that particular car. Back to Portugal and a lineup of slightly tired looking cars here, and in the foreground is a Fiat, or more likely in fact a SEAT 600. These were licensed, built in Spain, and of course Spain's just over the border from Portugal, so I'm guessing this is one of the Spanish built cars, but either way I think it probably reached the end of the road. And looking in much happier condition is this. This was at the, where was this? Trentham Gardens in 2023. Again, I videoed this one. BYJ275Y, this Renault 5 Gordini Turbo really did look the bee's knees. This was a really cracking example of the little Renault. And how about this? A bit of work going on with this Mark II Ford Escort race or rally car. This was in the pits at Alton Park. I don't remember the event for this particular car, so I'm not quite sure what it was there for, but either way, it looks like it's receiving a bit of TLC underneath the front end. And how about this? A Hillman Minx, one of the Arrow series Hillman Minxes of the late 1960s, I think this probably is. Nice looking little car in red. Probably a contemporary really of cars such as the Volvo 140 that we've seen and the Mark II Ford Cortina, so it's very much styled along the similar lines. We've got a Ferrari here now, Ven 440L. This is, well actually it's a Dino. I don't think they're ever called Ferraris technically, although most of them have been fitted with Ferrari badges. This is a Dino 246 GTS, named after Enzo Ferrari's son. And we are over at Goresworth Hall now, and in the background is a red Triumph TR, but in the foreground, the VW Carman Gear. That one's on an L plate, so about 1972. How about this? EOS 729G. It is, of course, a bright red MGB GT. Even those Ford Kaz in the background are getting a little bit rarer now. Still quite a few red cars to go, so if you've stuck with me so far, thanks very much for that. And here, this was at the Malpa Steam Rally in the public car park. I was quite taken with the 2CV in the background as well. In the foreground is a Herald convertible, a Triumph Herald 1360 with aftermarket, I think a fiberglass hardtop fitted to this one. From a distance I thought it was a coupe, but it's not, it's a Herald convertible with hardtop. Back down to, I think, Prescott here, and a pair of cars ready to compete. In the foreground, a V8 powered Allard. These are powered by the good old flathead V8s. They always sound pretty fantastic. Unusual proportions, bit of an odd looking car, but they do sound good. And here we've got a Mini WJB 807. Now this is down as an 848cc Mini, registered in 1960, although the front end looks slightly later. The bonnet and the grille is from possibly a Mark II, so I'm not quite sure. There's been one or two upgrades on this particular car, but yeah, very, very clean example of early Mini. And here's an oddball one. We spotted this at the Tangmere Aviation Museum. Quite an interesting looking car, and even though it looks a bit Ferrari-ish, this is actually based on a 1964 VW. It's got a 1200cc engine in the back, but clearly a load of work has gone into that one, and actually is a really sharp looking car. And that really interesting spot at Tangmere rounds out this collection, looking solely at the classic cars and vintage cars that were painted red. I hope that was of interest. I've done several of these colour specific compilations now, so please check out the rest of the channel if you like this kind of thing. There's loads of videos here now, so like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of thing please, as it really helps the channel keep going. And there'll be many, many more videos along very, very soon. So bye for now.